So, are you getting sucked down the rabbit hole of no money down real estate deals? Well, I'm calling BS, and here's why. 2020 has been a bit of a struggle, a bit under the weather, and I've loads of goals and stuff I want to work towards, but being a little bit under the weather is not a great start to 2020. But however, I have been kind of inundated with loads of videos popping up on my social feed in regards to no money down real estate deals. I'm not quite sure if it's just me because I'm involved in property, or is it something that is popping up on lots of people's feeds because it's the start of 2020 and maybe they're pushing this content out there to try take advantage of people at the start of the year who might be looking for a change or looking to set new goals, and they're preying on people who might be vulnerable to this kind of scam. And I think it is a scam, and that's what I'd be calling BS on it. I think it's a scam. So realistically, all I actually think they're trying to do is to sell courses in real estate investment, and they're trying to pitch them at people who probably don't have any great understanding of real estate, or maybe have a lot of funds, and they're saying you can do this for no money down. I think it's a scam. I think these gurus and stuff can obviously invest in real estate and show that they're investing in real estate, but that's pretty easy when you make a few thousand off people every time they show up to a seminar and sign up to one of these courses. And you make a few 100,000 fairly quickly by scamming these people, and you can easily then invest into property. I actually saw a great video on this topic. It was called the Entrepreneur Formula. I'm not quite sure why this one showed up on my feed, but maybe I was trying to do a bit of research and it showed up on my YouTube feed. But it's a great video. I'll link it below. I think it kind of explains what a lot of these seminars and talks are about. So that's actually not why I'm calling BS on no money down real estate investment deals, especially in Ireland, and here's why. So first off, I have a degree in property economics. It's a 4-year degree, and during those 4 years I never actually remember anyone or any of my lecturers or any of the textbooks mentioning anything about no money down real estate deal. Perhaps the course is out of date because it's a long time since I was in college, but I just don't understand how these deals can actually be possible in the real world. So reason number 2 why I'm calling BS on this is I've worked in the real estate industry for 16 years, mainly in commercial and a small bit of residential. I've never met any of my clients or any of the people I've ever dealt with claim that they've done a no money down real estate deal. I've yet to meet anyone who in person who has actually claimed that they've done such a deal. The only time I've come across it is online. So don't get me wrong, I've met and worked with lots of people and lots of clients who have been able to structure real estate deals with little of their own cash or none of their own cash. But these have been structured with debt finance, and even when they have structured with debt finance, they have had to put up some sort of collateral, and there's no way I'd call these no money down deals because a huge amount of money has gone down on the deal and a very high interest rates would be payable on that, and there's no way I'd class this as a no money down deal. So the third reason why I think it's very difficult to understand how these no money deals are possible is the fact that when you look at major international property investment funds, that they generally have to raise a huge amount of cash to start off with. And the way they'll do it is they'll approach investors, approach pension funds, and they'll say we're going to invest in certain asset types. Say we're going to invest in hotels across Europe. And what will happen is they'll raise, say, 300 million across their clients. They'll pool it together, and then with that 300 million, they'll go approach a major international bank and look for a very low interest rate on, say, something like 700 million. And they'll have a fund of about €1 billion to spend. But they've had to create a huge amount of cash reserves to be able to allow themselves to invest $1 billion. So we're talking about major funds having to still have to raise a fairly large cash reserve to go off and invest in property. Just boggles my mind to think that someone who's never invested in property ever before can somehow feel that they can invest in property with no cash reserves, and this whole no money down concept is actually possible. So I've looked into some of the strategies that these so-called gurus preach in regards to no money down real estate investing, and again I would call BS on all of them. And even if you were to get one of them to work, I'd question how ethical it was or how legal it was. So the first one that most of them preach is rent to rent. There's nothing new about rent to rent. It can be done on the residential side or it can be done on the commercial side. Generally speaking, on the residential side, it is renting somewhere for a lower value, maybe doing some works to it and letting it out at a corporate let. Sometimes this could be let on Airbnb, but that's getting harder and harder as rules are changing. On the commercial side, it can take many different forms. So say on the industrial side of things, you could rent an industrial unit and then split it up into smaller bays and rent it as storage units. So the hotel market actually would be quite common for rent to rent. This is something that the hotel market has used across the world for decades, where operators would rent a building, set it up as a hotel, and rent it out to guests. And that's how most hotel models have worked for years. Beginning to change slightly now, but that's how they used to work. Also, what's quite common within the commercial side would be office lettings. So where you would rent an office space at a low level and divide it up into smaller units and lease it as serviced apartments. This has happened for Regis for generations, and also more commonly WeWork, and we all know what's happening in WeWork at the moment. And I think a lot of people would argue that WeWork didn't actually rent a space at that low of a price. And one thing I suppose that's very important in terms of when you're thinking about WeWork is WeWork actually always claimed to be a tech company, never a real estate investment company. And I think this is quite important because in the rent to rent model, you are always at the mercy of the landlord and the tenant that you've put in place. So therefore, in my mind, I would never call this a real estate investment because you have no assets, and all you have done is you have built an income stream, but you've also gained a rental liability. So in my mind, this is not a no money down deal on a real estate investment because you have no investment and you have no asset. So the next common strategy that's preached in regards to no money down deals is to agree a price on a property that's lower than the market value and agree to sell it on to someone else at a future date at a higher value. This one's a bit tricky. There's other ways they've talked about this in terms of agreeing a price a number of years down the line and renting it for a number of years. In my mind, I can't understand how this would actually work, because even if you were to agree to something like that, or an owner was to agree to something like that, when the seller actually brings this contract to their solicitor or lawyer, their solicitor or lawyer really should be saying, hold on a minute, if you agree to this, you're locking up your property for a number of years at an agreed price, and this doesn't make sense because you are tied into this contract. Most solicitors will say, do not sign this if they're advising their client correctly. And even if they were to agree to it, what they would suggest is that a very large deposit is taken at the very onset of the contract. And what will happen is if the purchaser, i.e. the person who's trying to do this no money down deal, doesn't complete everything that's required within the contract, the owner of the house can rip up the contract and keep this very large deposit. And that's the only way I can see solicitors who are acting on behalf of homeowners agree to this. The other kind of common one would be the fact that there would be someone trying to sell a house. They'd agree a low price on a house and then they would try sell it on to someone else. This can't really work in Ireland, be very difficult in the UK, and it would also in the US might be kind of difficult. But in terms of this, I just don't see how it's working, because legally speaking, from an Irish point of view, you can't sell something you don't own. And even if you were to agree a contract to buy something and then also at the same time agree a contract to sell it at another point, if you tied yourself into that, you would end up creating a very big liability for yourself if the first contract didn't actually go through, because you'd be liable to close on the other one and you don't have anything to close with. So the next strategy that they preach is deal sourcing, and generally speaking what they do in this one, and I have a few issues with this one, but I think it's perfectly fine to do if you are deal sourcing for a member of your family that you have agreed. If you go find a deal for them, you'll take an equity stake in the property. I think that's fine. But someone's money is going down. So again, I don't understand how this is no money down deal. So someone in your family is paying for this. If you are out there sourcing property on behalf of someone else, and you have structured a deal in such a way that you are taking an equity share in a property if you find a deal for someone. Well, in Ireland you can't do that because you need a license to be out there sourcing property for someone. So you need to be a licensed agent to go find property for someone, and I think it's a very big risk for someone to take on because there is fines, there is penalties, and you can be held liable. And also it's a big risk for whoever your client is because they're not protected either if you do something wrong. So this deal sourcing method generally kind of preaches find someone who's cash rich, time poor, you go off and find a property for them and take an equity stake in it. That's fine under principle. But I actually do have a bit of an issue with this from an ethical point of view. Because if you're starting out in property and you've no experience and you find someone who is cash rich and you talk them into giving you an equity share in a property, they're trusting you who has no experience in deal sourcing or finding property or knowing what to look for. And I find that is it's a worry that someone would agree to that, because in my mind it's very unlogical for someone to agree to that when realistically if they want to find a property and they want to invest in property, all they need to do is walk into their local agent and go, I'm looking for X. The agent will find it and the agent will charge X and will take no equity of the property, and if the person is time poor, that person can agree a management fee with numerous local agents to manage that property on their behalf. And this is the way it should work. Can't understand how there's a market there for people to be going out there deal sourcing when they're not a licensed agent. I'm all for people getting involved in real estate investment. It's a great way to build wealth long term. I'm just really putting this out there to make sure that people are aware of these kind of scams that are out there, to make sure they don't fall for them, because I've heard some horror stories. I actually heard one terrible story about some young 20-year-old who actually gave a guru close to £12,000, and just to say that didn't end too well for him. There is lots of ways to learn about real estate investment. I would suggest the best way is actually get a job with an actual investor or developer. After that, there's lots of courses you can do, proper courses you can do, not these kind of gurus that just pop up for a weekend here or there, but there's proper degree courses, there's diploma courses that you can do. It's not a straightforward thing. You need to learn how to analyze a deal, because there's people who lose fortunes on property, so be careful what you do. One of the best things I'd actually say, if you're really interested in property investment, would be the best thing to do would be to study finance and study how deals are structured, and that would be your best way to. I see some of the best investors out there aren't really property people. Some of them are actually finance people. So I know I might take a lot of slack for some of the stuff I've said. A lot of people might come out and say there is loads of ways to invest in property with no money down, but if you know of any and you've proven that it works, put a comment below or send me a message. I'm happy to learn more. I'm always happy to learn more how these things can be done. So I'm just putting it out there from my point of view. I think it's a scam, it doesn't work. It's just a way it's clickbait basically, to get people, one, watching videos, and two, to get them onto their courses. And that's how I feel after nearly close to 20 years experience within the real estate market, from college to working. I don't see how they actually could be put together legally or ethically. If you have any thoughts on what you'd like me to cover in the next video, put a comment below. I have a list of videos I want to make over the next few months, but if you have any ideas, put a comment below and I'll add it to the list.